Oh, who wants some tea? Hi everyone, Hezu here. This video has been a long time coming, so apologies for being late. This is a follow-up in regards to my Steven Universe Future Finale Sucked video. I finally got my hands on the art books and scraped through a few interviews. It was a lot of reading, but it brought to light a lot of interesting information. So, allegedly, Steven Universe was canceled, or a more accurate term is cut off. Rebecca was always treading deep waters with Cartoon Network when it came to the LGBTQ+ stuff. She was pulled aside over the answer booklet and was told she needed to downplay Sapphire and Ruby's relationship. Cartoon Network was not happy about Ruby and Sapphire being openly gay. Near the end of season 5, one of my top favorite Steven Universe episodes, Reunited, Garnet's wedding episode, was pitched to Cartoon Network. Rebecca had to really fight for this episode because, unfortunately, corporate only cares about their money, and a lot of money comes internationally. So, CN was essentially appeasing conservative countries for funding, and having a gay wedding means it would need to be heavily censored or straight up pulled out of airing entirely. They kept beating around the bush, trying to make every excuse in the book why they couldn't have a wedding. Even had the audacity to bring up, but what about the 8-year-old boys that watch the show? They're not gonna want a wedding. So if they weren't being homophobic, they ended up making themselves come across as sexist instead. Which ties into this shady plotline about CN wanting Steven, a 14-year-old boy, to become the leader of the Crystal Gems, a group of immortal, powerful goddesses that essentially mothered him. But they wanted him to be the leader, when it's supposed to be Garnet. Cartoon Network agreed to give Rebecca her wedding episode if they made Steven the leader, which Rebecca sneakily danced around, but it's not just me, right? This is really weird. The situation is really weird. And soon after Rebecca was granted her wedding episode, Cartoon Network officially told her they were cutting her off. They would not get a season 6, which again, shady as all hell. Rebecca knew they needed more time to complete Steven's story, so she begged them for 6 more episodes to be tacked onto the final season, which was granted and turned into Diamond Days. Somewhere along the timeline, they were also granted a movie, but according to Rebecca, I was told that there was no point to a movie unless it existed to promote more show. Cartoon Network didn't want to fund a movie for a show that was no longer airing, so they gave her Steven Universe Future. So, Steven Universe essentially ended 3 times? 2 of which were rushed, and the middleman ended like it began. I mean, what an emotional roller coaster. I'm honestly even shocked Cartoon Network allowed Steven Universe to make anti-racism PSAs, especially after all this. And shame on the internet for disliking videos literally asking kids to not be racist. Okay, back on track. In my original Steven Universe video, I mentioned they didn't have a final cast song. Being Human was the last song we got. Rebecca wrote it, but it was sung by Emily King, someone Rebecca personally resonated with when she was young and in a vulnerable state. In regards to not having a final song to the series, Rebecca says, "I didn't want Steven to have to perform. I'm trying to set him free." I mean, yes, but all the other cast members are available for a final goodbye? I still think singing him a sweet lullaby instead of cry screaming at him would have been a better send-off for the show. I will say, though, the Crewniverse believes Steven Universe the movie might be all they had left for a time, which is why the movie feels like a recap with a ton of songs for all the characters. The movie was essentially one big song finale. So we did get a song finale, many times over in fact. It was just played too early in the act. I made a whole video talking about Pink not being gone, and actually, according to the art book, the Crewniverse was in heavy debate about this. They actually did entertain the idea that Pink was still alive, that she could maybe communicate with Steven somehow, but never with the others. However, they felt disturbed at the idea of bringing Pink back from the dead, despite doing that for every other character in the series. I think if we went the Pink is not gone, but her form is permanently corrupted, and only her her subconscious can reach Steven sometimes to help him when he's in deep trouble route, we could have had more closure for Pink. And also more mother-son times? A good time to do this would have been for the movie, which was actually set up, but ultimately didn't happen for some weird reason. And Pink Pearl, or Volleyball, had two different backstory options at one point. She would have either been broken like a doll by Pink during one of her games, or she would actually stand up for Pink and be broken by the other diamonds. The Crewniverse later ended up fusing the two, where in canon, Pink accidentally broke her and then she was stripped of her free will by White. I think the latter of her origins needs to be talked about more. Okay, I've been back and forth over my opinion on the diamonds, but I think it's safe to say redeeming the diamonds was a very bold, risky, and maybe bad move. The Crewniverse built up Rose, then crushed her down, but we never really see Rose get built up again after that. They're very insistent that Pink was a complex person, but Steven never seems to forgive her. He just doesn't want to think about her or hear about her ever again, which isn't fair. They say Pink's redemption happened in reverse, but it left us on a sour note with Steven just hating her in the end, which is ironic because the other three diamonds are so much worse than Pink. Homophobic, racist, totalitarian, murderous psychopaths. Or at least White was. Steven hates White almost just as much as he hates his mom, which again, is so unfair. I've mentioned before that their redemption is rushed and also undeserving in regards to White. They played it off like everything was going to be pinned on her.
You don't have to do this! Yes, I do! This is what White Diamond expects of all of us. I've conquered so many worlds for the sake of the Empire. I do everything you ask, and I do it all perfectly. But your very high standards put us all under a lot of pressure. A gem could crack under so much pressure.
I know my purpose isn't to be happy, but I find it harder and harder to enforce your rules when they make me miserable, when they make us all miserable.
We could come up with a plan to help everyone. You could start by helping Yellow and Blue. What? Guys?
It's unstoppable force Steven versus immovable object White. What happens when they clash? To Rebecca, they become friends, but to me and so many others, they destroy each other. Rebecca took the pacifist route that had sparked major disagreement amongst fans. I really don't think eons of arrogance would change so quickly. Or at all, honestly. Steven Universe's end, of course, would have taken on a very different outcome had this route been changed. Some people tell me it's a kid's show and they couldn't possibly kill off or hurt anyone, but like, did you see the cluster's original design? I mean, Powerpuff Girls killed off Bunny, Infinity Train killed off a villain. Don't even get me started on Adventure Time. Steven Universe isn't just a kids show. American cartoons are often labeled for kids only, which is weird because the people behind the show are adults. You can blame the censorship team for preventing them from going too far, but even then, showing kids they can forgive abusers or writing a villain into an out-of-character redemption they don't deserve, forced pacifism doesn't always work in real life. Sometimes violence is the only answer. Opinions unwaver because people are stubborn or have different experiences, and some people should never be redeemed, nor do they want to be redeemed. The show itself acknowledged this. Steven always talked and hugged his way out of everything, but White Diamond and Jasper are the exceptions. Through brute strength and violence did he change their minds. And through all his pacifism, in the end, he's the one who ultimately suffered. So I don't know what they're trying to teach us here. Steven fixing everything with a joke invalidates Pink Diamond's suffering. It invalidates the entire war. It invalidates all the organics and gems that suffered or were massacred. Pink did take the pacifist route like Steven did at first, but the diamonds gave her no choice. Why did it work for him and not her? She had to fake her own death for 2 out of 3 of them to take her seriously. And when she, quote-unquote, returns to them, they treat her like they always did. Steven told Bismuth shattering wasn't the answer, when in reality, it was. This is especially ironic when you consider the fact that the show lost its consequences. We are told the cluster is irreversible, but Steven went in and helped them cope and they became something new. We are told the kindergarten's damage is irreversible, but then Steven can bring it all back to life now with a simple kiss. We are told shattered gems are dead forever, but now they can be put back together. And organic life forms can be brought back to life and turned almost immortal too. Well, as long as their bodies are still around. Rest in pieces to all those organics lost amongst the eons of colonization. Taking away consequences for every tense point of plot makes it feel like everything was for naught. That none of it mattered, which doesn't sit right with me. I don't think it sat right with anyone. And of course, despite Steven Universe being strapped for time, I still think the writers were slacking on Peridot, Lapis, Jasper, and Lars. They were prominent secondary characters that were pushed aside or developed off-screen. So we can't blame everything on CN closing the show too soon. But who knows? If CN hadn't off Steven Universe, we would have gotten cool episodes like The Show, another episode of Pearl and Mystery Girl at a roller rink, an Emerald episode, and a whole Rhodonite episode that Rebecca said could have been stretched into an entire arc, featuring their ex-master Morganite that may or may not have included all of the off-colors in some way. I mean, they're Alice in Wonderland parallels. Exploring them with Lars and Steven would have added so much to the story. There would have been a Diamond origin arc that explores more of Homeworld and the inner workings of their society. We could have maybe even had a Centipedal episode, more Lapis interaction with the crystal gems, more compelling Jasper flashbacks and redemption. The Crewniverse could have come to their senses and given Peridot the shorts she obviously looks so much better in. I mean, the possibilities were endless. So, what happened? What happened here is Cartoon Network told Rebecca back in 2016 that SU was being canceled after season 5. She begged them for 6 more episodes on top of that season to complete the story. Somehow, in the midst of this, the Crewniverse was granted a movie, but CN thought the movie would be worthless if it wasn't promoting an ongoing TV show. So, to Rebecca's surprise, she was granted Steven Universe Future. Unfortunately, because she and her crew believed Steven Universe wouldn't continue, they were forced to wrap up the show's main plot and rushed most other side plots to finish prematurely. Suddenly, they're given a movie and essentially one pseudo 6th season, but with the show's previous finale, they had no choice but to move on and attempt to do damage control with the time jump. The Crewniverse may have started to feel exhausted with the show, as one does, working nearly a decade on it and putting up with CN's bullcrap, but they just set up complex arcs that introduce characters that they did not have the time to wrap up in the end. Knowing how much filler Steven Universe has in its first few arcs is a little sad because so much of that time could have been used for the show's build-up or ending. Of course, you can't expect them to foresee something like this happening. I mean, especially with how popular the show was. Cancellation was the furthest thing from anyone's mind. Some of the characters and plot neglect is on the writers, but that could have been solved had they been given more time. The Steven Universe Future finale sucked, not because of the plot lines, but because it was rushed. And it was a last-minute thing to try and patch up loose ends the crew thought they originally had no hope of coming back to. The Steven Universe Future finale was great for what it set out to accomplish. However, in the overall scheme of things for the franchise as a whole, I still adamantly dislike it. But there's only one entity to blame for that: Cartoon Network. So thanks, Cartoon Network, for pulling the plug on the best show you've ever had. I adamantly believe Change Your Mind was the show's true ending. I mean, I was so upset and crying when it came out because they set it up like that was the end, and originally it was going to be. That ending was a rushed cliffhanger, and the foreshadowing in the escapism episode sort of spoiled the ending for a lot of the online community. Not many people were jazzed about this abrupt pause in the Diamond arc, though some enjoyed the tension relief. Foreshadowing is supposed to be a hint, not like an entire episode. The movie set up Pink Diamond's return, but ultimately failed to deliver, and sort of retconned some prior visual plot points that they could have taken this opportunity to remedy or explain. I mean, Spinel destroys Earth, resets Pink's friends, and uses a rejuvenator on Steven's gem to directly get revenge on Pink Diamond. Solid, awesome villain plot. Spinel does all this to bully Steven, someone who she knows has nothing to do with Pink Diamond. Illogical. Weird. dumb. And Future's opening foreshadowed something terrifying that only lasted 10 minutes and wasn't terrifying at all. I was relieved to have more answers and content, but still pretty disappointed because, again, there's no more tension in the series because all the consequences have been removed. Not even rejuvenation is permanent. Steven Universe Future and the movie was essentially a band-aid over an open wound. It helped, but this franchise's end was a mess that left a bitter taste in my mouth. I truly thought it was going to go out with a bang, but CN tripped it and SU fell flat on its face. They were still able to limp to the finish line, but the Clean Glory dream was stripped away from them. As far as I'm concerned, Steven Universe got cancelled. I still love Steven Universe with all my heart, but there will always be a void left in its wake for me. I just don't feel like I got real closure. Anyway, that's all I really have to say about that. I have a renewed respect for Rebecca Sugar and her team for having to deal with corporate. If that were me, I probably would have gone insane. Thanks to all my patrons for supporting the making of this video. If you'd like to see more of my stuff, links are in the description. Hope you're all safe and well. Love y'all. Bye-bye.